Hey there, and welcome yet again to another installment of Strange Planet. And I'd like to give you a friendly reminder, if you'd like to get a little deeper into this podcast, you can always become a premium subscriber. It's real easy to do. Just click on the link in the episode notes, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. You gain access to ad-free listening. We love our sponsors, but sometimes it's nice to listen uninterrupted. You also gain access to special bonus episodes. Again, become a premium subscriber, strangeplanet.supportingcast.fm. On this episode, when a public figure dies under strange circumstances, the official story usually arrives fast, clean, polished, and convenient. But what happens when that story starts to fray within days? It's been less than a month since the shocking assassination of Charlie Kirk, a man at the center of America's conservative movement, and already the facts don't seem to fit. A supposed lone shooter, a quick FBI wrap-up, a political world eager to move on. But behind the headlines, something darker is taking shape. Why was there minimal security at a high-risk event? Why did Israeli media seem to break the story before American outlets? Why was the camera behind Kirk mysteriously moved minutes after the shot? And why is everyone, from Turning Point insiders to Megyn Kelly, so eager to declare the case closed when the evidence looks anything but settled? Joining me is Geoffrey Gilson, a British-born investigative author, attorney, and political strategist who began his career writing speeches for Margaret Thatcher. He's moved in the highest levels of power in both London and Washington, and his deep knowledge of global intelligence networks, political finance, and covert operations gives him a unique lens on this mystery. Geoffrey is the author of Maggie's Hammer, a gripping expose that connects the dots between secret arms deals, money laundering, and the shadowy overlap of Western intelligence, Russian oligarchs, and American power brokers, a web that incredibly touches names like Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, and Robert Maxwell. He brings a lawyer's precision and an insider's skepticism to this unfolding case, one that's starting to look less like a random act of violence and more like a tightly choreographed operation. Geoffrey, welcome once again to Strange Planet. How are you?
I'm fine, Richard, and thank you for having me back. Happy to be here talking about this subject. Not happy about the subject, but happy to be talking about it.
Well, as I said, the story is barely a month old. Already it's riddled with what I see as contradictions from a lawyer's and an investigator's perspective. What are the biggest inconsistencies in the official timeline?
Well, before I get to this, Richard, possibly for your viewers, it's helpful to say, what on earth does a Brit who wrote an expose in Maggie's Hammer bring to this conversation? Well, first of all, I'm an American. I was born and raised in Great Britain and have lived half of my life now in America. I currently reside in South Carolina. Maggie's Hammer as a book, as an expose, it sort of falls into three parts. Yes, there is the expose. There's the picture I put together of the circumstances surrounding my friend's death. His name was Hugh in the 80s, in 1988. And then later on, I linked to how it leads through trails to current things like Epstein, Russiagate, and even the assassination of Charlie Kirk. But the first half of the book is a roller coaster. It's a bit like James Bond, I have to say, because my friend turned up mysteriously dead in the woods for no good reason in 1988. I spent 30 years investigating a mysterious death. So, as a lawyer and I have to say, amateur, only because I didn't have a professional body backing me, no newspaper funding me. As an amateur investigator, I had to put together my own rules to sort out the chaff from the truth, to find out what was going on. In the case of Hugh, the question was this murder or was this suicide? In the case of Charlie Kirk, the question really is, was it a lone gunman or was there more to it? And why does there appear to be a cover-up? Is it a cover-up? And what I want to do with you, Richard, is go through those things bit by bit. But overall, I would say go to the same starting place that I went to with Hugh. Is there one single thing that stands out and makes you scratch your head? And can I just stop at the scratching head point and say, we're spitballing, we're speculating, we don't know. And at the same time, we must not forget we're talking about a human tragedy. The death of Charlie Kirk brought a lot back for me because Hugh died when he was 40. He had children who were 11, 8, and 2. No suicide note was left. That was one of the big question marks for me. In the case of Charlie, he has 2 young children and a young wife. It's a human tragedy. We are discussing in a mercenary fashion a human tragedy. We should never forget that.
Yes.
But we are discussing the mercenary side of it. So let's just plug on. In the case of Hugh, what didn't make sense was why would this man, when he died, $7 million was missing from his law firm. Why would he steal this money over the course of a year and a half and not disappear? Why would he go and commit suicide? Why would he not leave a suicide note? I worked for him, although I wasn't involved with the money missing, and I knew him personally. He was my friend and political mentor. Suicide didn't add up. There was a starting point. It didn't make sense that it was suicide, but I had nothing else to go on. In the case of Charlie Kirk, and probably, Richard, what we're going to keep coming back to in this program is the kill itself was just too proficient. You and I, I'm sure, have both read a lot of information from people like Candace Owens, an ex-Marine sniper called Marcus Allen, another gentleman called Ian Smith.
Yes.
And certain theories have been advanced, but the fact of the matter is it was way too proficient. We are supposed to believe that a 22-year-old who was having emotional problems managed to get onto a campus during a major event. And another bit of information for the viewers. I'm 69 at the moment, but I went back to college late in life. I've just spent 7 years at Clemson University. I know what college campuses are like, and I also know how more secure they became during COVID. Every building at Clemson now has key card access. You can't just walk onto a roof. But we're supposed to believe that Tyler Richardson managed to get on campus, walk around wearing dark glasses and dark clothing with a bag, maybe 2 bags, got onto a roof, took a shot, kill shot, one shot from between 150 to 200 yards, clean shot, got off the roof. We've seen the video. Very, very calm. No sense of hurriedness about it. And especially if you look at how he moves from the building to the road, he slows down. I don't know if people know how difficult it is in a highly charged moment actually to control your feelings. It takes extraordinary training. The whole thing just speaks, if not professionalism, proficiency.
And
There are
sorry,
other
but I just wanted to jump in, and that all presupposes that was in fact Tyler Robertson in the video, which is another huge question.
I'm going to come to that in a moment.
Okay.
But you say what things plural? Not things plural. It's one thing. This kill was very proficient. And what I did with Hugh over 30 years was put together pieces little by little, talking firsthand to intelligence officers and so on. How did I get into intelligence? Well, first of all, I didn't. It was one of his friends came to me and said, "Do you know he's in British intelligence?" And that led to a roller coaster of intrigue. For 2 years, I was on the lam. My life was being threatened because I was investigating this. I was shot at. I met with the CIA. I met with Mossad in Montreal. That's all in the book. I won't spend too much time on that. But what I did was I built up a picture, and every step of the way, because we're all of us dealing with circumstantial evidence,
Yeah.
I had to have what people were saying to me make sense in the terms of the big picture. So the first thing that we deal with is the fact that this was a very proficient kill. Now, let's go through some of the allegations that have been made. The first one is, and some of them I'm going to agree with and some of them not, Richard. The first is all of the activity around Kirk at the scene. The first thing to bear in mind, and I've watched previous videos of Charlie Kirk. I followed a lot of what he was doing. I didn't agree with everything that he said, but he is a very compelling character. And the most compelling thing about him, having myself spent 7 years on college campus, is he invited discussion.
Mm-hmm.
College campuses at the moment, they're not quite as bad as Columbia in New York, but they are hotbeds of political challenge and discussion and so on. And one of the things that we older students have to do is calm the discussion. And that's what Charlie Kirk did. Even though he was very forthright in his views, he opened up discussion. And more than once he said, I really want people to come and talk to me. I don't want there to be barriers in the way. And he insisted on not having security. That was Charlie. He said, I've got to have one or two people around me because we've had some crazies rush the stage and I've been hurt. But you will see that there's no massive security around me. There's no barriers. I'm not trying to keep people away. That's a terribly sad thing, Richard. We ought to be able to have conversations on campus without our speakers requiring Secret Service details and without colleges becoming concentration camps with watchtowers. I don't know if we're going to be able to avoid that now. But the first thing is he didn't have much security because that was his request. Now, you can compare his assassination with the assassination of John F. Kennedy and with the death of Diana. And it's still pertinent to raise the question, well, okay, he said he didn't want security, but was there some way of moving the security away from him? Going to come back to that. But he would say there was no security because of him. 30 years of investigating deaths, trying to cut to the chase here. Most assassinations are either lone, crazy gunmen. Think Saran, Bobby Kennedy. Single, handgun in a foyer of a hotel, rushes up, kills him. Or they are zone assassinations. And that was the case with Kennedy, and it's debatable whether Diana was assassinated. I think that was a deliberate killing. I just don't happen to think she was the target. I think Dodi Al-Fayed was the target. That's a different story for another time. In both cases, a zone was created. And I've been told this by my British intelligence and Israeli intelligence contacts. We don't have highly organized killings because there are too many moving parts, they go wrong. We choose a zone, Dealey Plaza, the Paris Tunnel. And what we then do is we clear it out of as much security and cameras as possible. In the case of Diana, within a mile radius, all the CCTV cameras were down for half an hour when she died.
Right.
And then we throw everything we can into that muddle. Different gunmen, grassy knoll gunman, this motorbike, that Fiat, making noise, flashing lights, possibly drunk chauffeur to see if something can happen. In the case of Kennedy and Diana, it did happen. What you very, very rarely, and I can't think of an instance, what you very rarely have is an intricate, highly organized, many moving parts, visible assassination attempt around an individual. I've read all of the comments from Candace about what might have been coming up through the floor, what might have been up somebody's arm, potential Israeli bodyguards. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I'm saying it's highly unlikely. It's not the way that it's done because they're on camera, they're too visible, they can be witnesses, they can be questioned. You create the zone, in this case, the pit at Utah Valley University, and then you put other people into it. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing is, could there have been other gunmen? I'm trying to keep this organized in my mind, Richard, but I think this is as good a place as any to raise this. I don't know. We have to look at Tyler. I'm not quite sure if he's Robertson or Richardson. I keep seeing different.
Robinson.
Oh, Robinson. Okay, Tyler Robinson. Here was this 22-year-old. 22-year-olds are not very organized. When I was 22, if I got politically angry about something, it was all I could do to organize a 10-man march. I didn't have the bandwidth, the time, the organization, or the chutzpah to be able to go and shoot someone on campus. This is a young man who, leaving aside the detail, was clearly disturbed. He had allegedly a roommate who was transitioning. He came from a conservative family. First thing, from my own experience in the British Conservative Party, you get gay people in different political parties. You really do. And if you are in a conservative party, it is troubling. You can't, genes don't dictate your politics. Genes dictate other things. And if you are in a conservative family and a Christian family, and you discover that you have different sexual proclivities, that can be major league disturbing to people. So you have this troubled young man who may or may not have been discussing matters with his friends. And then suddenly appears on campus. Sorry, Richard, I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. Along with the fact that this kill was too proficient, I don't buy the fact that it was him. In that regard, we looked to all the things that were released by the FBI on the day. All these blurred photographs of this young man on campus. I can't say that one doesn't match the other. I can't say anything because
No,
they're all so blurred.
exactly. And
Why? So
yeah, and it's I think pretty well known that, as you say, certainly since COVID, before COVID, these campuses are covered in cameras,
absolutely.
and we're talking about high definition 4K
Yes.
cameras, and all
Yes.
the FBI can produce are blurry photographs.
I mean, that's the whole point, Richard. Campuses, and I know this because I know, for instance, the president at Clemson, Jim Clemens, they take security very, very seriously. Sexual assault, big issue on campus. They have the cameras precisely so they are high definition. So you have all these blurry photographs, and then people may not remember this. At the time when these photographs were all originally released, tucked away in the middle of them, I still don't know where it came from, is this very high definition picture of a young man, probably late 20s, very clear definition, who is clearly not Tyler, but is wearing exactly the same outfit.
Hmm.
I tucked that away. I still got the photograph. I'm not sure how many people have mentioned it, but why is it there? Who released it? If it's AI, why hasn't that person come forward? Why was it released at exactly the same time? Since we're on the question of the FBI pictures, we all know about the video, and everyone talks in terms of this video about whether he's jumping down with one bag or two bags. And again, at the same time, this is day one, day two. As I'm saying, this is a very proficient kill for one 22-year-old man to be undertaking. I'm wondering about something that I have not seen mentioned anywhere else. I may be wrong here. I've been on a variety of different shows, and I've invited people to approach me and provide me with information if my technicalities are wrong. But I know something about CCTV cameras, and I think they're supposed to be static. And if they're not static, they may, I don't know, may be able to be manipulated manually somewhere. Everyone go back and have a look at the video.
Hmm.
It pans,
It's a tracking shot.
it
You're right.
moves.
You're right.
It's a tracking shot. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, who is tracking this guy who we think has just committed an assassination, but we don't know? Now, that for me is the third single most outstanding point. Forget everything Candace Owen has said. Why was this kill so proficient? Why are the pictures so blurry? Who is the person that isn't blurry? And why is there a panning, tracking video shot? Is it actually real? In which case, who's behind it? Or was it a setup? I don't know. But it struck me as very, very strange at the time. So I would have to say, and again, we're spitballing, I simply do not buy that Rod Richardson was either the only person on campus or indeed was the gunman on campus. I'm not sure.
Right.
In a stop and take.
And we are spitballing because we have to, in the absence of, Kash Patel, FBI director, promised transparency. And once again,
Yes.
we're not getting transparency. And I understand that they are trying to, hand over to the prosecutors in Utah, all the evidence that they can to give them a clean case and so forth. But we're not getting transparency. So in the absence of that, nature abhors a vacuum, so it gets filled with speculation, spitballing. We have no choice really in this
I, that's
environment.
that's absolutely right. As a lawyer, and it's difficult to wade through this. I would say, well, let's be honest. You and I are on a short on a show together talking about this, spitballing because we want to do that. Um, there are other people who have to fill ratings, and I'm not going to be rude about anyone, but a lot of speculation and spitballing is going to arise from the fact that people have to fill time in the media, in print, online, whatever else it may be. Yeah, forgive them for that. They have to. We want to try and separate speculating on speculation, drawing conclusions from, Could this reasonably be added to a list of things that need to be answered in due course? I would say the proficiency of the kill, the blurry pictures, the unidentified individual, the panning camera. Somebody has to come up with an explanation that answers those questions. Um, People moving around, Israeli bodyguards, I doubt it. If somebody comes up with information that one or more of the bodyguards has Israeli connections, that opens up a whole new can of worms. Candace Owens raised, and I'm just trying to go through this logically in my mind. Candace Owens raised a point about a camera behind.
Yes.
I don't know why. I don't know why the camera was moved. I don't know why concrete was laid down the next day. Was it actually subterfuge? Were they covering something up? Were they merely embarrassed? I don't know. Was the camera removed for reasons of evidence? I don't know. Candice says that she saw something on the camera, but we've not had any of that shared with us, so I can't comment. What the comment that she did make is that there was no blood coming out of the back. Let's just deal with that one for a moment because I think it deals with up close shots. Marcus Allen, I think, is very clear, and he was the Marine sniper, but he is in absolutely no doubt that in terms of the trajectory and what he saw, that this was a sniper bullet from the roof. It wasn't up close. The evidence to date appears to be that the entry wound was where we see the gush of blood and that the bullet did not exit, which is why nothing came out of the back. I don't know, but that's what we were told. That would almost certainly have, I've spoken with nurses. They said it's quite obvious the carotid artery has been breached. You're talking death within 10 seconds with that much blood coming out. And I spoke with one nurse and they said, well, what about the quantity of blood? And she said, I don't know much about caliber. My granddad knows more about guns than I do. But she said, just looking at the amount of blood coming out in that first gush, that the artery hasn't been breached. The artery has been shattered. She said, there's no way anybody could stop the flow of blood. Again, without wishing to be upsetting, she said he was dead before he reached the vehicle taking him to the hospital.
Right.
So I think that deals with the camera. I don't know. If something comes forward in the future, then fine. But I don't think there's any kind of up close assassination. I think it was from a distance. In terms of the FBI as a lawyer, it's really difficult. Kash Patel, Pam Bondi are on the hot seat. We all know that we still don't have answers to Buckler from a year ago. And they are, I am sure, very keen not to do anything, Tyler Richardson still being alive, to preempt the trial. It may just be that they are being religious about not being so transparent. His defense attorneys can say the case has got to be thrown out. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. That doesn't mean that there are not incongruities. I'm just not sure about any of those particular matters that Candace Owens has raised. But most of these people like Candace have raised the same points that you and I have raised. Do you have some questions? Because
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you. I mentioned Megan Kelly earlier, and I'm a
yes,
fan. I think she does. She's a sharp legal mind. She covers true crime on her podcast. I think she's a terrific
yes.
interviewer, just smart as a whip. I'm a fan. But for someone like her to say they've got him dead to rights, Tyler Robinson got him dead to rights in the face of all of these incongruencies. These are threads. Now, maybe they will all eventually tie up into a nice, neat little bow, but right now we have inconsistencies. For her to say they've got him dead to rights, I mean, what do you think she's missing or perhaps choosing not to see?
Well, this is probably where I have to leap ahead, then to work back. The short answer is, in my opinion, and I'm spitballing, she's scared.
Of what? Of
I,
what
I,
or
I
who?
Mossad.
All right, let's explore
Now,
that.
I leapt ahead. Now I'll come back,
Okay.
and I'll bring in. I'm bringing in my book. I don't just make that comment idly. About a month before, several in the months before Charlie's assassination, he had started to talk about matters in Gaza, and he wasn't quite as pro-Israel as he had been.
Hmm.
This is a red herring. I don't know whether it's a deliberate red herring, but it's a red herring. A lot of people, Richard, has started doubting what's happening in Gaza. A lot of people, even solid pro-Israeli people, have started to question just what's going on in Gaza. Donald Trump has. They haven't ended up dead. I don't think that's the reason. I do, however, think that there is something going on behind Tyler. Let's look at Tyler for a minute. He is a very suggestive human being. Um, Islamic Jihad, which is a generic term for a lot of terrorist groups, are very good at radicalizing young people. Why do we think they're the only people who are good at radicalizing them? Great Britain is one of the most radicalized Muslim countries in the world. When Osama bin Laden's hideout in Afghanistan was finally raided by the US Army, they found communication equipment where Osama had been communicating with sleeper cells around the world. 50% of the communications were with Great Britain. When we talk about Muslim terrorist nations, Great Britain, even though I was born there, ranks as one because the Muslim community in Great Britain is very radicalized. You have 3 million Muslims in America, 3 million in Great Britain. That's about 0.1% of the American population. It's 6% of the British population. Without wishing to be racist, imagine walking down the street, imagine going into um, Walmart and seeing black people. Of course, you see black people. They represent about 12% of the population. Now, look at all the black people, divide by half. That's what it's like walking into a store in Great Britain. And I'm not being racist. That's how many Muslims are. And they have become very, very radicalized because Great Britain has such a free, libertarian political society still. So these young people are radicalized, and they're radicalized because they pick young, suggestive people who have no ties, who are disturbed, as Tyler was, and they radicalize them indirectly, not directly, indirectly. No one would be able to say who it was who persuaded them to attach a suicide bomb to their back, but they get radicalized indirectly. I believe that Tyler Richardson fills that profile. That's all I can say. I don't have any evidence, but I think he fills the profile of somebody who is suggestible. I think that also explains why this young man who allegedly was on campus fled and wasn't caught, but then gave himself up. Why? Because somebody else suggested something to him that it would be decent to turn himself in. A very suggestible characteristic profile. And okay, but if he wasn't the gunman, why would he do this? Again, he's been radicalized. I don't know. But if you were to say to me, is it possible that he could have been radicalized into accepting the blame for something because he believed that was the right thing to do? Look at some of the stuff we know he has written. Yeah, I think so. We'll have to wait for the trial to see. But I believe, and that's all I can say, believe, because it fits with the proficiency. Behind that radicalization is an entity. And I believe that entity is I say Mossad, that's a coverall. It's a deeply hidden, um, deeply deniable element of Israeli intelligence. Because of Gaza, no. Because a month before Charlie Kirk was assassinated, he had, ironically, a session on radio, on television, with Megyn Kelly. And he said, and I've gone back and checked it 6 times, I'm beginning to, and these aren't precise words, I'm beginning to look at Israel and Epstein, Mossad and Epstein. So what? Epstein, political blackmail. No, no, no. The primary source for my book is a gentleman called Ari Ben Menashe,
Yes.
with whom I'm on and off still in contact. Ari came out in 2019 and shared the fact that Epstein did not get his beginning in New York. He got his beginnings in London in the 80s, which is where my friend Hugh got his beginning in exactly the same area of activity. Nothing to do with sexual deviancy or political blackmail. That came later in New York. Not my friend, just Epstein. It began with arms dealing and money laundering. That's what Epstein went to London to get involved with in the 80s, when before he was rich. And he met up with a well-known British arms dealer called David Lease, Douglas Lease, I think, and was introduced through Douglas to Ari, who was headquartered in London at the time, selling arms to Iran and Iraq because of the war there. Other elements of those same groups included Hugh, who was involved in money laundering for Ari out of these same arms deals, millions of dollars into Eastern Europe through Robert Maxwell, and later, possibly, Donald Trump, which is where that comes into it, and Vladimir Putin in Russia, when somebody else took over after Hugh died in 1988. That's what Epstein was involved in. Well, okay, but that was arms dealing in the 80s. No, the networks that were established in the 80s continued through the war of terror in the noughts up until now. $300 million a year is paid into the British Treasury from kickbacks and commissions from continuing legal and illegal arms deals. And those kickbacks are paid to politicians, intelligence, military, and civil servants, senior British Conservative Party and Labour Party um, oligarchs. Well, but surely that doesn't have anything to do with the present. Yes, it does. This continued from Margaret Thatcher through John Major into Tony Blair's government, Labour, in the late 90s and the early noughts. Tony Blair's right-hand man was Peter Mandelson. Peter Mandelson had a close affiliation with Wafik Sayyid, who was the Middle Eastern arms bag man for the Saudi royal family in terms of arranging kickbacks, which were laundered by Q, arranging kickbacks back to senior politicians in the Conservative and the Labour Party. When the Conservatives weren't in power, Labour took over. Peter Mandelson organized, was the guy who negotiated with the Saudi Arabian middlemen the kickbacks to British politicians. Disappeared from sight. Keir Starmer, current Prime Minister, a year ago, makes Lord Mandelson his UK ambassador to Washington. The story doesn't end there. The files come out on Epstein, Mandelson's all over them. Not taking part in sexual activity, Mandelson's gay. He's in those files for reasons we're not being told. But what we are being told is there was a very close relationship with Epstein. Why? It's got nothing to do with sex. It's got to do with arms, networks, and money laundering. Epstein was much more than a reprehensible political blackmailer. He was he was a senior asset for Israeli intelligence. Now, come on. Okay, something from just a few weeks ago. A media outlet called Dropsite News. Viewers, this is a left-wing journal. Do not just stick with the journals that make you comfortable. There are some and you will know this, Richard, very, very well written, very well researched journals that are not right-wing or centrist, they're left-wing. Some of the best investigators are left-wing. This is a very, very well researched article. I went through it very carefully. It maintains that Epstein, in his later years, helped to negotiate a security agreement between Israel and Mongolia. Why? Because Israel needs friends, and it gets them wherever it can. When Ring of Truth, in the last few years, as I've continued talking to Ari, he told me how he had been tasked with arranging similar security guarantees with Azerbaijan and the leading militia group in Libya. This article didn't mention Ari, just mentioned Epstein arranging this security deal. Not operating political blackmail, no, operating on behalf of Israeli intelligence to secure a security agreement between Mongolia and Israel. Epstein was much more than a reprehensible political blackmailer. He was a senior operative for Israeli intelligence. Now, if the Epstein files contain all of that, this may be why they're not being released. If you and I say, we think this is what is going on, trust me, Richard, we're still going to be alive tomorrow morning. But if Charlie Kirk says he's going to investigate the Epstein files with millions and millions of followers,
Right.
this is the sort of situation where, according to Ari, who told me of the people who had been killed during his time in office, that is the sort of situation where a deeply deniable element of Israeli intelligence might have radicalized someone to take out Charlie Kirk at short notice. That's a very long explanation, and we're way deep in the land of speculation.
Indeed. George Zinn. This is the political gadfly who falsely confessed. Now, you've investigated false flag operations and diversion tactics before. Does Zinn's behavior fit that pattern?
Um, I remember, Richard, when I was talking to my intelligence contacts, and I tried repeatedly to get senior investigative journalists in Great Britain involved. And time and again, they would come back to me and they'd listen to tapes and so on and say, these people just sound like they're crazy. Well, they are. That's who intelligence agencies hire. They hire crazy people so that they're deniable. They engage in false flag operations to hide. When I first met up with Harry, and I just wrote to him out of the blue. I read his book, and his book said something that made me go and talk to him. He said that in November of 1988, he had been tasked by Yitzhak Shamir, the Israeli prime minister, to put together a team to take out people in Europe who were still engaged in the pipeline to Iraq. They wanted that pipeline to stop. It was okay while there was a war. It had to stop after the war. Various people were taken out, including Gerald Bull, a well-known developer of um, um, machine guns, artillery, and something called a super gun for Iraq. But the date, November 1988, caught my attention. The other thing that caught my attention was the fact that my senior British intelligence operative told me, in a revelation that made no sense because it didn't connect to anything else, that he believed that Hugh had been taken out by the mafia. Well, Richard, I'm investigating this and I'm investigating that, but The Sopranos did not figure in my investigation. So, but it stuck there. In Ari's book, he said to false flag their operation, they set up a company to hire, wait for it, Palestinian gunmen who believed they were being hired as mercenary gunmen by the mafia. So that's how the Israelis set up false flag operations. If I was someone putting together an assassination of Charlie Kirk fast, and I was going to radicalize someone like Tyler, I would then send all sorts of crazies on campus, triggered to say things to police officers. I mean, think about it. If you've got police officers running around trying to stop a gunman, and you've got two or three people running up to policemen saying, I did it, I did it. That has a pretty chilling effect on your police operation. So I can't say for certain, I do not know, but it certainly fits the picture of false flag zone operations.
Again, you've traced hidden alliances among Epstein and Robert Maxwell, global intelligence. Do you think Kirk, outspoken, well connected, incredibly influential, politically disruptive, crossed one of those same networks? Was it? Well, you mentioned Mossad.
Yes, yes. I'm going to say something about Charlie Kirk, and I don't say it to be upsetting. I say it in admiration of him. I didn't agree with him politically. I did like what he was doing on college, in college. I've seen Charlie Kirk um, interact with his children. This is a lovely man who was, Richard, naive. He was just he didn't go to college, but he dealt with college people. I believe he was very. I don't think there was any subterfuge to Charlie Kirk. I think he was dealing with matters that college kids were raising with him, and I think that he may have seen something. I would like to say it was something I'd written, but I doubt it. And I think he was beginning to have problems with Israel, that they had crossed a line in his mind, and he may have seen something which intimated Mossad connection to Epstein. And I think he said he may have started casually to investigate it. My perception of his interview with Meghan is they both look scared. And I think that he may have raised it to say, I'm looking at this. I don't think he had deep knowledge of it. I think he stumbled across something. And I can see a possibility. I can see a picture where someone says, that's a line he cannot cross. We cannot let him go there because he is an honest man and he will dig deep and we can't have that. We don't mind the Gilsons of this world digging, but we do mind someone like Charlie Kirk digging. I don't think there was any subterfuge there. I think he was a victim.
Candace Owens has brought up the point I think is valid, that he was receiving a lot of pressure from donors, Jewish donors, about his, let's call it a pivot on his support for Israel. And I'm just wondering if Turning Point USA, once it got to a certain level and huge donors started signing on, whether he lost control, it became too big for him, and ultimately this machine that he created turned on him.
I don't doubt that the machine might have been about to turn on him. Charlie Kirk was a Christian, was raised a Catholic. I'm not a practicing Catholic. He was a deeply committed Christian. The thing, and I say this sort of standing to one side, the thing about deeply committed Christians, and I see it with Mike Johnson too, they're reasonably sure of themselves. I don't think that Charlie Kirk was going to be swayed by somebody threatening him. There is some doubt about the Bill Ackman meeting, but I'll accept it at face value. I will say that there was a meeting, Bill Ackman, and an enormous amount of pressure was put on Charlie. Let's leave aside Mossad for the moment. Why not? He's got a huge voice. He's got a big following. He's beginning to turn against Israel on Gaza. Let's have a little chat with him. Let's try and get him to stop doing this. Let's offer him money. I think the point is, Richard, that's what they did. They offered him money. They didn't say, do this, Charlie, or we're going to kill you. Do this, Charlie, or your life's in danger. They offered him money and he turned it down. I don't believe those people would then have arranged to kill him. And interestingly enough, when that meeting was followed shortly by the assassination, Bill Ackman backed off badly. I think he got burned. There's perhaps a deeper question. Was the meeting to try and persuade Charlie to stop being anti-Israel because of Gaza itself a setup to cover the assassination by Mossad? I don't know. But I would find it very difficult to believe that you openly approach someone, have a meeting, offer them money to stop being pro-Israel, when there are a lot of other people also being anti-Israel. I don't believe that would lead to assassination. I believe the Epstein situation might lead to assassination. But just think about this. If we were just looking at Epstein and Megyn Kelly and Charlie Kirk's assassination, would we be talking about Bill Ackman? No. Most of the conversation about Israel relates to Bill Ackman, who I think is now embarrassed. So, very definitely a possibility that even the Ackman conversation was a false flag operation. At which point, if I was one of your viewers, I'd be saying, Richard, he's giving me a migraine. Is it really this complex? And the answer is it is complex when you're throwing a lot of stuff into a zone. So I don't think it was because of Gaza. I think if, and I do believe strongly, if there was some sort of Israeli involvement in the background, it was because of Epstein and what we don't know. And talking about pictures that make sense, it also explains the change in stance of Trump and Bondi about releasing the Epstein files. I don't think it's because Trump's name is in there, because, Richard, we all know Trump's name is in there. So is Bill Clinton. So is Bill Gates. Epstein made himself a major society fixture in New York. You didn't operate in New York as a Clinton, as a Gates, as anybody connected with the United Nations, as a Mandelson or as a Trump, without crossing paths with him. So I've no doubt their names are in the file. That's not why the Epstein files aren't being released.
The Israeli media broke this story, Kirk's assassination, even faster than the American media. They may have been first. And Prime Minister Netanyahu commented almost immediately, went to great lengths, showing this letter, this love letter that he received from Charlie Kirk. Given your experience inside Western and Israeli intelligence circles, how do you interpret the speed of that response, both from Israeli media and from Netanyahu?
Excess and guilt. Um, I think that Netanyahu made a mistake, but I think he had to, because I think this is thrown together very quickly. He was right out of the gate saying what a wonderful person Kirk was. I don't know whether the Israeli media had it first. I'll accept that. That again, every time you're faced with a situation like this, and this is my experience, you have to make a calculation. I've had the calculation made about me. I was shot at. I was told back in the 2 years when I was on the lam that Europe was not a safe place for me. Why am I still alive? Because, and I've been told this by Ari and by my British intelligence source who is now dead, natural causes, that I have now been vocal enough that if I was to turn up face down in a canal, it would so not make sense that people would look at what I was saying. So I'm safe for the moment. Everybody makes a calculation, and I think the calculation was if this was Mossad, but not Gaza, Netanyahu has to be on the scene immediately, even if it looks suspicious that the Israeli media had it first, even if he is, looking guilty because he is praising Kirk that much when he knew that Kirk was anti-Israel. He could have said something like, "Well, I'm obviously sorry about his death, but um, if you're asking me personally whether I'm upset, I'm more upset about what he was saying about his." You'd expect something like that, but there was this gushing praise for Kirk. That spells a little bit of guilt to me. But again, I'm spitballing.
So again, just sort of in summing up, you're you're saying that the disinformation works by flooding the zone, as you say, with easy answers, a lone shooter, a simple motive. So that's what we're seeing here. A story designed to close quickly before the real questions take hold.
Absolutely. And just as a general point for people who are following this sort of thing in the future, when anything like this happens, it's slightly different now with AI and online. Get as much information as you can in the immediate moment, get it off your computer, get it off of online before they start changing it. Because I can tell you from Hugh's death and other deaths that I've looked at, information changes very quickly and almost diametrically. But this, I suspect if I had to put my money on the red or the black square in the casino, I would say Tyler Richardson is a patsy. He may be a willing patsy. I believe that this was a very proficient kill. I believe that there was an entity behind the kill. I believe it was some deeply entrenched, deniable element of Israeli intelligence because of Epstein. I think that's what I think they needed the deeper Epstein to be kept quiet.
So you've moved again in both UK, US power circles. When you look at how swiftly political elites have aligned around the FBI's narrative, what does that tell you about where the pressure might be coming from?
Richard, I don't know because on the one hand, I'm not going to dismiss establishment. Let's look at Kennedy for a moment. Two elements to Kennedy. First of all, there were the people killing him. Secondly, there was the creation of the zone. Now, in Kennedy's time, his brother Bobby was in charge, was Attorney General, but Edgar Hoover was still in charge of the FBI, and he was no friend of the Kennedys. Lyndon Johnson was vice president. He was no friend of the Kennedys. This assassination occurred in Dallas. It's been many, many years, many decades now. I've read enough books to know that it's pretty much concluded that those elements of law enforcement and national security who were independent were removed from the scene. So I can't rule out the possibility that there was an attempt to create a zone down in the pit at Utah Valley. Perhaps the bodyguards are suspect, the camera, the lack of emergency vehicles. I think that was more incompetence and embarrassment than something more nefarious, but I don't know. In terms of the alleged cover-up, is it just the FBI and the Attorney General trying to keep their case clean so that it doesn't get thrown out? I don't know. Is it confusion in the moment because we're still in early stages? I don't know. Is it possible that there are still elements in national security and the FBI, even with loyalists in charge who are covering something up, are hiding something, who are involved. It's possible. There are inconsistencies, there are incongruities, but I honestly can't tell the difference between incompetence, embarrassment, wanting to have a clean case, and something more nefarious. If we were to come across something like this bodyguard is connected to Israeli intelligence, if we were to see a video camera with a muzzle flash from a window that is not discounted by experts on the scene, then it would open up a whole new can of worms. The one thing I'm going to say, it's sort of in closing, I'm not closing just yet, is this. I think we want to be very careful about suggesting a cover-up, because Trump does have loyalists in charge of the national security and law enforcement apparatus. This is not Trump 1, this is Trump 2.0. And if we really hold to the possibility that these organs now under the control of loyalists are covering up, that means it's the Donald Trump establishment covering up. And I'm not entirely sure that's where we want to go.
If you could ask the FBI or Turning Point USA one question that might blow this entire story wide open, what would it be?
One question?
Yes.
Maybe two. You're
Okay.
going to allow me two?
I'll give you two.
Why is the video camera panning, and why are all your pictures blurry? That's it. After a very pleasant hour spent talking about this with you, Richard, you notice I come back to the starting point. If you don't have that starting point, you don't have anything. With Hugh, it was dying without spending the money, didn't make sense. It wasn't suicide. I now know it was murder. In the case of Charlie Kirk, this kill was too proficient. It doesn't make any sense. We don't have clear photographs. We have a panning camera. Doesn't add up. I want a lot more information about those pictures of people plural, we are seeing on campus. They don't add up.
And just take a few moments again and tell listeners about Maggie's Hammer and how we can get a copy.
Maggie's Hammer, you can get a copy of Maggie's Hammer. You just Google it. And it's MAGGIE''S Hammer. I'm Geoff Gilson. That's spelled the British way, GEOFF. You Google that, you will find the book. You'll also find my Facebook where I write, which I use as my blog to update the book and what's going on. And basically, Maggie's Hammer started as an investigation into the mysterious death of my friend in November 1988, discovering, as I spoke with firsthand with intelligence officers along the way, because I discovered he was a senior officer in intelligence, brigadier general in MI6, that he was involved in arms dealing and money laundering for Margaret Thatcher. And those networks that were established by him and others have continued all the way to the present day, and I believe are inherent in matters like Crossfire, Hurricane, Russiagate, Epstein, and the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Geoffrey Gilson, always a pleasure. Thank you, my friend.
That's my pleasure.
A new Richard Syrett's Strange Planet drops every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.